As a responsible figure of the reptile keeping community, before we rush off to get these new animals, there's a little bit of preparation that we've got to do first. Now what I mean by this is that before you go out and get any animal, you should have already set up the enclosure that you're going to put it in, so that when you get back it's not going to be stressed out waiting for you to set it up while sitting around in its carry container. What I'm setting up for the new leopard geckos that I'm getting at the minute is just a very basic setup, and this is by no means their final enclosure, because after they've finished their quarantine period, these new female geckos will be joining my male in his approximately 62-gallon bioactive vivarium in the main reptile route. Now on that note, you might have a few questions about me keeping a group of leopard geckos together, but that is a big topic for another day, and I have been researching it for several months, so that is something I will cover in a future video, but for now I basically just want to cover getting new animals. Now then, a basic rundown of this enclosure is that, like I say, it is just a very basic setup. For heating at the minute, I do just have a heat mat to provide a gentle warmth at night just from below, because obviously I can't have a massive rock stack in a relatively small glass enclosure, which would provide a sort of natural gentle heat overnight. Again, something that I've talked about in the past. But the main heat source is just a 60-watt incandescent light, and that does provide the majority of the warmth. As of yet, I don't actually have any UV lighting for these geckos, but in my opinion it is an absolute necessity, so they will be getting some of that whilst they are in quarantine as soon as I'm able to get a new bulb. But yeah, like I say, setting up this enclosure is just something that I wanted to share with you before we rush out and get new animals, because, you know, people do that where they want something and they go and get it, and then the geckos just sat around in a little container being all stressed out, whereas if you were to just set the enclosure up before you go out and get your animal, then it's not going to have to go through that. So I did just want to share that with you, but now that I have, we can go straight out and get the geckos. Wherever possible, it is always a good idea to examine what livestock you're getting before you actually commit to buying it. I do always like to buy from a trustworthy shop. Not all shops are trustworthy, but, you know, I am lucky enough to have one that I do really like near me, and that is Sutton Pets Exotics. You should basically choose your gecko firstly off whether it's healthy or not. Firstly, I look at the eyes and see that they should be very clear, held completely open, they shouldn't be clamping their eyelids down. Then, if you take a look at the skin around the entire body of the animal, there shouldn't be any cuts or abrasions or stuck shed skin. If you look at the toes and the tail, ideally it's going to be the original tail and all the toes are going to be there. Accidents do happen. But if it has its original tail and all of its toes intact, then it's likely to have received better care throughout its life so far. Then, if you look at the cloaca or the vent, that should be free of feces and the surrounding scales should be clear. And finally, they should be very lively when you're holding them, and they should be entirely responsive to touch. All of the geckos were as healthy as they were going to be for the morphs that they were, so I basically just picked the two that I like the most and would do well in the breeding project that I'm going to start in a couple of months. And then it was time to bring them home in just the nice secure containers that I've been given, and I did also wrap those with a towel so that it would be dark on the journey home. Then back at base, it was the time that we've all been waiting for, the time to set the new geckos free and have a proper look at them. does she think she's doing? So the two that I chose were just a plain old Max Snow and also a Hypo Max Snow. Personally, I do just like leopard geckos that have a sort of more wild type coloration. Actual wild type leopard geckos though seem to be quite a rare morph these days. So Max Snows is the closest I was ever going to get. And also for the breeding project, my male leopard gecko, which I've had for a couple of years, he is a Max Snow, so crossing him with Max Snows and then a Hypo Max Snow is going to yield some interesting babies, so that should be cool. I also want to mention that there were some, I think they were Tremper albino or Tremper hybino leopard geckos that I was looking at, and they were the orange ones I showed you earlier on in the video. And whilst they, like I say, they were as healthy as they're going to be for the morph, I'm just not into albinos at all really, or just any that has got a sort of recessive trait, because when you hold them, they just don't seem to have that vim and vigour for life that the other geckos have, so that is something I tend to steer clear of. But anyway, once again, I'd like to say that the setup that these geckos are in at the minute is just a completely basic one. I will be doing a few changes with it and a few little experiments over the coming months during the quarantine period. So if you want to see that, then do stick around. And of course, just based on like necessities, the UV lights will be coming in for them very shortly. Now then, that pretty much brings us to the end of this new additions video. I know I'm really excited about it and I hope you are too. If you want to catch up with these geckos and how they're doing and how the breeding project pans out, then make sure that you hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of that. But for now, this is the end of the video. I've been JTB Reptiles teaching you how to follow nature's example, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys! Oh yeah, and the bearded dragon's called Char, by the way.